The National Desk, America's News, now.
Hurricane Francine making its way towards Louisiana. The warnings and watches in effect for the Gulf Coast as more natural disasters are in play tonight. Debate fallout, what each campaign thinks of their candidate's performance and the impact it has on voters with less than 60 days left until the election.
Not only did he treat me bad, you know what I'm saying, he also treated my teammates with, disrespect.
Tyreek Hill calls for the cop involved with his traffic stop detainment to be fired. But tonight, what the footballer is saying about how he also could have better handled the situation. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David, and breaking news as we come on the air. Hurricane Francine officially strengthening into a Category 2 storm as the eye wall is about to make landfall. And let's take a live look now at New Orleans, right outside of Morgan City, Louisiana. This is just about an hour outside of that city, where the eye wall of that storm is expected to hit, with sustained winds of 90 miles per hour and gusts of up to 115 miles per hour. Life-threatening storm surges continue all along the coast. Francine making its way north with a path expected to take it east of the Mississippi River over the next few days. And we're also taking a live look at the Mississippi River in Baton Rouge. Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry today, he told residents if they had not evacuated by this afternoon that they should just remain in place, wait out the storm, and stay off the roadways. On top of heavy rains and hurricane-force winds, the National Weather Service has issued a tornado watch for southern Louisiana and parts of Mississippi until 11 p.m. Central Time tonight. And we will be following developments on Hurricane Francine throughout the night for you. You can always stay up to date 24/7 on thenationaldesk.com. And you can also always join us tonight for the late edition of TND as Francine moves north over Louisiana. Tonight, we continue to commemorate September 11, 2001, a day we will never forget. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris joined more than 1,000 people near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, at the crash site of Flight 93, where passengers on board that ill-fated flight attempted to regain control of the plane from terrorists who hijacked it. The superintendent of the memorial, Stephen Clark, says fewer and fewer generations will remember these heroes, but events like this keep their memory alive.
Despite lacking this lived experience, these young minds come to special places like the Pentagon Memorial and here at Flight 93 National Memorial to learn how the actions of ordinary people have shaped their world.
At the 9/11 remembrance ceremony in New York, former President Donald Trump and Vice President Harris put aside their differences to exchange a handshake and a few words. Ceremonies also took place at the Pentagon to remember the 184 people who died in Arlington, Virginia. Immediately following those deaths, our armed services saw a rise in new recruits, but 23 years later, that trend has changed. The National Desk's Joy Wang reports from outside the Pentagon on the many factors contributing to the problem.
At sunrise, 6:46 this morning, the U.S. flag was unfurled on the west side of the Pentagon. That is where American Airlines Flight 77 struck 23 years ago, killing all 64 on that plane and 125 people inside the Pentagon. Unlike the surge in enlistment numbers following 9/11, the military is seeing record-breaking low recruitment numbers. It's been 23 years since 9/11, and this year marks the smallest active duty force since 1940. I spoke with Elizabeth O'Brien about hiring our heroes. She says a major factor is employment instability among military spouses, which happens as they relocate with their service member. When deciding whether to stay in or leave the military, more than 50% of military families actually cited spouse employment issues as a top factor. Military spouses also have record rates of unemployment, remaining steady at about 21%. Hiring Our Heroes is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation's nationwide initiative that's helping to address these barriers by providing pathways to employment. O'Brien tells me she's a military spouse for more than 2 decades. She was living on Long Island on 9/11. Her brother was a firefighter on the job that day in New York. And that monumental moment in our nation's history has had significant impact on recruitment and retainment of military service members and their families.
We know military families are making serious decisions around whether to remain in service to our all-volunteer force, and certainly the role of a military spouse and the opportunity to go to work has significant impact. We're looking at the smallest active duty numbers in our all-volunteer force since before World War II. So there's a significant decrease, and we're working daily with stakeholders all across America to be part of that solution.
And right now, the search for a suspected shooter in Kentucky continues for the 5th day. 32-year-old Joseph Couch, accused of opening fire on Interstate 75 on Saturday, injuring 5 people. Police believe he is armed and dangerous. Crews are combing through thousands of acres of forest. Some schools and businesses are closed for safety reasons. The reward now up to $35,000. Philadelphia leaders, meantime, gathered today to mourn the death of police officer Jamie Roman. He died last night from wounds sustained in June when he was shot in the neck during a traffic stop. Officer Roman had been in the ICU at Temple Hospital since the shooting. The suspect in the shooting is in jail and now has murder added to the list of charges against him. Jamie Roman was just 31 years old. Tonight, attorneys for the police officer placed on administrative leave for his alleged excessive handling of Miami Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill during a traffic stop say they want their client to return to his role as the department continues to investigate. They say the officer, seen in viral body cam video pulling Hill to the ground, was removed prematurely. This as Hill himself took questions today where he called on that officer to be fired, criticizing how he was treated while admitting some regrets on how he responded to police demands.
I could have been better. I could have let down my window, in that instant. Now, does that give them the right to literally beat the dog out of me? Absolutely not.
Hill says he does not want this incident to further divide people based on race, saying he still has respect for police and law enforcement. At least 16 people have died this year in the Grand Canyon National Park. The latest victim recovered just yesterday when the body of a missing boater was found. Officials from the park say on average they see between 10 to 15 deaths per year. With almost 4 full months remaining in 2024, already this year is one of the deadliest years in Grand Canyon history. 2 transgender girls in New Hampshire can play on girls' sports teams as they challenge a statewide ban. A federal judge ruled that an August lawsuit from the families of 15-year-old Parker Terrell and 14-year-old Iris Trammell was likely to succeed. The lawsuit seeks to reverse the ban that became law in July. The judge said a trial would most likely happen after December. A Rhode Island official and her daughter now facing federal charges accused of using SNAP benefits that they got through fraud. Prosecutors say a State Department of Human Services supervisor used her position to access personal information about SNAP recipients and card balances, and she and her daughter used them to buy personal items. The ripple effects of Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris, the debate, will be more clear when polling is sure to be released later this month. National correspondent Matt Gelka with a look at the immediate aftermath and whether there will be another one before the election happens.
Well, I think the moderators were very unfair.
Donald Trump putting his own spin on the debate. While he celebrated his performance, he bashed ABC and the moderators. His supporters claimed only Trump was fact-checked and Harris wasn't pressed.
They have abortion in the 9th month. The governor before, he said the baby will be born
and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born.
The debates changed this election cycle. Rules and format were handed over to television networks instead of being handled by the Bipartisan Commission on Presidential Debates.
If you're going to have a serious debate, you've got to have serious people moderating. You've got to have the respondents be more serious and devoting time to the more important issues disproportionately than the minutiae.
The rules had to be agreed upon by both candidates before the debates took place. The first debate between Trump and President Joe Biden that led to the unraveling of Biden's campaign had rules agreed upon by Biden's team. Harris supporters are quick to point out Trump agreed to ABC's format as well.
You know, he's complaining about the form, he's complaining about the moderators, he's complaining about the rules. He set those rules, not Kamala Harris, and she still cleaned his clock.
And Amira, next up on the schedule, the vice presidential debate with CBS News in New York. The possibility of another Harris-Trump showdown was floated by Harris's campaign, with Trump non-committal so far.
Matt, you mentioned Trump has been non-committal on another debate. What has he said about that?
Well, yeah, we did hear a few different things today. He told Fox News that because he believes he won the debate, he doesn't know that he'd want to do another one. He asked on his Truth Social account why he would even do a rematch, but he also told reporters a little earlier today that he and his team were, quote, looking at possibly doing another debate. So there is a chance we do see it again. Amir.
All right, and we know you'll be following it. Matt Galka live in D.C. for us. Thank you. Voters in North Carolina will have to wait days for absentee ballots. It comes after the state Supreme Court ruled counties must reprint them and take Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s name off since he dropped out of the race.
We haven't been given a timeline yet from either our ballot printer or the State Board of Elections, and that's kind of where we're in limbo right now.
Offices anticipate getting more information tomorrow on a timeline for printing new ballots. And coming up, a critical inflation report just before a big decision for the Fed and for voters, what it tells us about the economy. Then the staggering amount of money lost due to cryptocurrency fraud last year and the states that filed the most complaints. Plus, a drug to help dogs live longer is being tested for the very first time. How it would work when we come back. Right now, many communities in Southern California under evacuation orders and warnings because of 3 large wildfires that started during the extreme heat wave. The 48,000-acre bridge fire in Los Angeles County and San Bernardino County exploded to over 10 times its original size yesterday. Almost 40 homes have been destroyed. Police say a man is now in custody, accused of starting the line fire that's in the foothills of the San Bernardino National Forest. It is burning around 34,000 acres in steep terrain, and the airport fire is now over 22,000 acres after spreading from Trabuco Canyon into Riverside County. Today, Governor Gavin Newsom's office said they've secured additional federal support from FEMA for the fires. The National Guard also helping right now. Temperatures are finally cooling down in Southern California, which should help the situation. A fresh reading of consumer inflation is building the case for the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates when they meet next week. The rate of inflation continues to slow down, but actual prices are still painfully high for many Americans. The National Desk's Atra El-Nashar has a closer look.
The rate of consumer inflation continues to slow down, now almost to a rate economists consider normal. 2.5%, the lowest reading since February 2021, thanks to price declines for things like used cars, grocery staples, and a big one, energy. The average price for a gallon of gas is $3.25, according to AAA, 58 cents less than this time last year. But the cost of housing and going out to eat is still climbing. Airfare also rose last month.
Welcome to you both.
Inflation and the economy remains a top concern for voters.
We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before.
Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression.
Republicans on Capitol Hill Wednesday using a hearing about food and energy costs to blame the Biden-Harris administration for the high inflation of the past 3.5 years.
The upper class, the middle class, the lower class, they're paying more and getting less under the Biden-Harris agenda.
While the White House is emphasizing the progress made to bring down inflation and raise wages.
Wages are beating prices and the buying power of Americans' paychecks is going up.
The political debate tends to be about where the economy has been. The debate among bankers and investors on Wall Street is all about where the economy is going. And on Tuesday, the CEO of the country's biggest bank, JP Morgan Chase, said, "I would say the worst outcome is stagflation, recession, higher inflation. And by the way, I wouldn't take it off the table." But Bank of America's CEO says their data does not suggest that's coming.
What we see as a consumer activity is consistent with a low growth, low inflation economy and has stabilized.
Their analysts expect the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates by 1/4 point when they meet next week. And when they're done with cuts for this cycle, perhaps by 2026, interest rates will still be higher than they've been since 2006 or 7.
And those rates, that's actually a good thing because that's more normal environment. We can't have a low rate structure. It means that the economy isn't performing.
But for now, for the next 8 weeks, how the economy performs could impact how the candidates perform. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar reporting.
Well, there will be no vote this week on the House's version of a needed spending bill. The bill narrowly passed out of the Rules Committee just yesterday, but a growing number of GOP members expressing dismay could have led to a failed vote on the House floor. But Speaker Mike Johnson, he believes he will get the votes before it is too late.
We're in the consensus building business here in Congress with small majorities. That's what you do. That's what I've been doing since I became Speaker. We're having thoughtful conversations, family conversations within the Republican conference, and I believe we'll get there.
Time is running short for a compromise. Senate Majority Leader Schumer has been vocally opposed to the language in the House bill. The deadline to pass the funding package is September 30th. On top of a looming government shutdown, both chambers of Congress are scheduled to go on recess in October to prepare for the November elections. Tonight, no indication that a top Hamas leader would take a deal to walk free in exchange for hostages. Bloomberg News citing an Israeli official saying yesterday that Israel had floated the idea of allowing Yahya Sinwar, accused of being the key architect of the October 7th attack on Israel, safe passage out of Gaza once all remaining 101 hostages were freed. But tonight, a diplomat briefed on ceasefire talks says leaving the territory is not a priority for him, adding that Sinwar believes he is safer in Gaza than he would be in other countries like Iran or Lebanon. Both Israel and Hamas still appear to be far from securing a ceasefire deal in Gaza. Meantime, in the West Bank, in another Palestinian territory, President Joe Biden today condemning the death of American activist Aisha Noor Aigee. That's the University of Washington graduate who was killed in a protest last week by Israeli soldiers. The IDF admitted yesterday that fire was aimed at her unintentionally. Biden said in a statement that he was outraged by her killing, and he called for full accountability on the part of Israel. The 26-year-old's family remains critical of Israel and the White House, calling for an independent investigation in what they believe was the intentional attempt to silence her protest of Palestinian suffering. The United States will give $700 million in new aid to Ukraine. That's the announcement by U.S. officials as Secretary of State Antony Blinken travels to Kyiv in hopes of bolstering the country's chance of fending off Russian aggression.
We've now seen this action of Russia acquiring ballistic missiles from Iran, which will further empower their aggression in Ukraine.
Ukrainian officials also continued to press the United States to let Ukraine use Western-provided long-range missiles to hit targets in Russia. Western allies have been hesitant to allow that, fearing an escalation. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has issued its first ever cryptocurrency fraud report. In 2023, across the United States, the Internet Crime Complaint Center received almost 60,000 cryptocurrency complaints with a net loss of nearly $5 billion. The FBI saying that the United States had roughly 7 times as many complaints filed and monetary losses than the rest of the top 20 countries combined. And as far as states go, we're talking about California being at the top, the most complaints, almost doubling that of Florida. That's the second on the list. Texas, New York, and Washington rounding out the top 5. And for monetary losses, California again number 1 by a wide margin. But Texas, that had more losses than Florida, and New Jersey jumped into the top 5 on that list. And tonight, mega superstar Justin Timberlake has reportedly reached a deal that resolves his DWI case while driving in the Hamptons back in June. TMZ now reporting that Timberlake will plead to a much lesser offense that does not involve drunk driving, but is rather simply a traffic violation. He's expected to appear in Sag Harbor Village Court on Friday to plead guilty to that violation and pay a fine somewhere between $300 and $500. And coming up, even tiny ticks can be extremely dangerous. The steps to take if you find one on your skin. We'll be right back. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we begin in Virginia, where disease-carrying ticks are in their youngest stage.
Seed ticks are the larval youngest stage of a tick. Take a look at these photos. Folks here in Lynchburg say they took their dogs walking on the Blackwater Creek Trail and came home to find hundreds of seed ticks on them. Scott Baker with the Virginia Cooperative Extension says these ticks congregate, so you could have dozens on you at once. He says they may be small, but they're just as dangerous in their young form.
Usually they have to be attached and feeding on you for a while before they can transmit any potential problems to you. So the quicker you get them off, the better.
Baker says you should remove those pests as soon as you see them before they attach, but if they're already attached when you notice them, be sure to get the entire tick. Don't leave any part of it behind.
Looking to the future, a new system has been designed to help emergency managers better pinpoint areas that are in harm's way. Ed Flick with the Oregon Department of Human Services says this software will help local officials identify and prioritize populations and give better evacuation notifications.
What's really exciting is the potential to get all counties and tribes across Oregon on a single system.
The software was launched this summer and used in Deschutes and Jackson counties for wildfires. Now, Wheeler County can say the same.
So the County Emergency Management Coordinator, Mitch Elliott, has been very enthusiastic about this system. We checked in with Mitch today. He said that the system is ultimately going to save lives.
Nurture Animal Clinic is at the forefront of science. Dr. Gabe Ibanez is the only veterinarian in the tri-state participating in a clinical study helping researchers develop the first ever longevity drug for dogs.
So we have owners driving as far as 2 hours away for their visits.
G is one of 9 dogs participating in the study at Nurture Animal Clinic and one of hundreds across the nation.
With everything, there's risk, but if nobody does it first, then you're never going to get to that point where you can actually change the future.
Researchers at the company Loyal are focused on understanding and treating the underlying causes of aging.
Well, when they say everything is bigger in Texas, it apparently also includes lotto jackpots. Coming up, just how much one lucky someone is walking away with. Someone in Sugar Land, Texas has 800 million reasons to celebrate tonight. They are the new winner of the Mega Millions jackpot at an estimated $800 million. The lucky winner could walk away with the cash option of $404 million. This is only the third winner for the game this year and 7th largest in the game's history. As for who the winner is, well, we will likely never know. Prize winners in Texas of $1 million or more, they can choose to remain anonymous. So to that anonymous somebody out there who just won against those crazy odds, job well done. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. Join us again this evening for more coverage of America's top stories and, of course, for that steady coverage we will have for you on Hurricane Francine. I'm Amira David, and thank you so much for watching.